we got Suren and Chris. E-board versus the GoPed. And they're off. And Suren got smoked.
It's been a minute.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Specifically, it's been almost 5 years since I dropped the video. Since crashing the car and failing to live up to another video commitment I had made, I needed to take time to refocus. 2019, I went back to school to finish what I had dropped 4 years prior. It was a bigger commitment than I had initially anticipated, mostly because I wanted to make the most of my time and take as many classes as I could. After about 300 units of work, I'd graduated in 2022, which was a surreal moment in my life. By this point, I quit working on the cars at the shop, but I remained a motorsport mechanic, which allowed me to gather inspiration from a variety of cool cars I got to see at the track. Anything from vintage Porsche 935s to super Trofeo Huracans that I was working on over the course of this past year, I took inspiration where I saw fit. While in school, I occasionally worked on the Miata. I kept pushing myself out of my comfort zone to try and learn new skills. One of the challenges I set out to complete was bodywork. I wanted to transform the look of the car into something special, and I used the opportunity to learn how to make molds and body parts out of fiberglass. I learned very quickly that I hated fiberglass, but I needed a way to make bodywork for the car without breaking the bank on rare JDM parts. I spent this time primarily disassembling the car and trying to gather my thoughts on the next course of action for the build. I briefly dipped my toes in the ponds of wiring and some minor fabrication, but quickly realized that this would be too much too soon, given how stretched thin I was in my other commitments. In the meantime, 3D printing and scanning technology became cheaper than ever before, and as a profound hater of manual labor, I dove right in, hoping that I would never have to sweat over bodywork again. It began when I bought a $120 monoprice Mini Delta, as an introduction to 3D printing. I knew nothing about slicers or CAD, but I knew I hated manual labor and that 3D printing could potentially allow me to streamline tasks that normally would take me weeks to complete. All I had to do was buckle down and really dive into this new-to-me field. It began with Tinkercad, and I eventually graduated to Fusion 360. The printers also evolved from the MP Mini to a Cosel Delta, and eventually my first large build volume printer, the Anycubic Chiron. Between 2019 and 2021, most of my attention was focused on 3D printers rather than the car, and my reasoning behind this was that since I needed to learn this stuff anyway, directing my focus away from the car for a couple of years to learn this craft would pay itself off by allowing me to save time on tasks that would otherwise be tedious and time consuming. I messed around with fiberglass molds and figured if there was something I would have trouble printing, it would be big ass fenders. Around 2021, the entire car was stripped to bare metal and parts were seam welded. The fuel cell was installed, sound deadening was dry iced, and undercoating was burned off. The stock pedal box was modified to a dual master setup with a booster delete. At the same time, I was also working on the daily as a testbed for some of the printed components. The printers were yielding results: printed headlights, printed over fenders and flares, spoilers, dive planes, dash clusters, line holders, you name it. Things got out of hand very quickly. Along with 3D printing, I also got into 3D scanning. When I first started, I was using an Xbox 360 Kinect along with Skinect's 3D Pro version. It got me familiar with meshes and mesh refinement, but I was unable to fully utilize it for reverse engineering. It wasn't until about a year ago that I bought my first dedicated 3D scanner, the RevoPoint Mini. While it was brilliant on parts smaller than a brake caliper, it left much to be desired for anything larger than that. Given that most of the scanning I needed to do for my application required a scanner capable of scanning, well, larger parts more easily, I sold the Mini and picked up a 9-star 3D and have not looked back since. It has allowed me to make a variety of parts and pushed me to learn form modeling in Fusion 360. Now, remember what I said that of all things I wouldn't print, big ass fenders would be one of them? Stay tuned to see what the Einstar made possible in another episode. Now we are in present day. The footage you are seeing is not the first day of me working on the car since graduating, but it might as well be, as this is the last of what I call the lazy days of low productivity and output. The garage is a disaster, and I'm still getting back in the groove of things. I put on a few pounds, and as you will see, I barely had the stamina to finish a simple task. But I needed to push through.
It's not those, right?
Oh. Good eye. Good eye.
Are they really?
Those are it.
That's
That's
crazy.
exactly what I was looking for. I did 4 bolts. And I am drained. I have no more energy. That's all I had in me was 4 bolts. Motivation disappeared. This is ridiculous, dude. Fucking hell. I really should clean up the garage.
You think so?
I think it'd be a good idea.
It's pretty cozy looking.
Where is my 3/8 inch shit? Welcome to the fucking disaster, man. This is not how you do wiring, but if you're desperate, it works. Sort of. 3/8. What's before 3/8?
5/16? No idea, dude.
I think it is 5/16 actually. No, I think it is. Do I still have 5/16 mid-trim?
She be with this shit, hit a sprint to this. I was chasing after bag on some goody mob shit. Get rich to this. Black hoodie, no good in the trenches with 6 niggas and they might have clips with them. We was laughing, I see what kind of whip you in. Pay attention, I knew that you would slip again. Get rich to this, on some goody mob shit. Get rich to this, riding real low key in a tinted Benz. Little niggas can't see us like censorship. Where you get all of the cheese? I've been pimping pins, counting big face bills, getting dividends. I was at the canteen to get chips to this. All black, I was dipped in it. Ooh, ching ching, get rich to this. On some goody mob shit, get rich to this. Riding real low key in a tinted.
Wiring has been my weak point and still is. Unfortunately, it is a significant part of the build. I was not at all against hiring a professional to handle wiring, but most had long wait times and those who could help immediately could only offer wiring diagrams that I likely would not be able to follow anyway. I went about it in a roundabout way, but I did my best to at least start it off right. As you will see in another episode, however, I am ultimately unable to do the wiring on my own and will be getting help from my good friend Francesco. Speaking of friends, I'm tremendously lucky to have amazing people in my life that without any hesitation dive in to help me, and I can't wait to introduce you to them and their insanely cool projects. And one of those friends whom you will be seeing and hearing practically every episode is Emmanuel of LoveTap Media. Em and I have done some cool shoots together, and my return to YouTube is made entirely possible with his help. Whether I only have the energy to mount up 4 bolts or to spend hours on wiring, Emmanuel takes time out of his day to show up and to film the mayhem. Check out his channel and his videos linked in the description. As for what the mayhem consists of, here's the plan. The goal was to get the car ready for Miata reunion in October, and at the time of filming it is August. The car needs wiring, plumbing for water and oil, custom fuel cell lid, tires, brakes, V-mount for the intercooler and radiator, custom printed front fenders, bumper and rear quarter, printed rear airfoil, front splitter, sway bar mounts to be moved forward 17mm in the front, and some other small bits. Showing up at Sonoma and turning laps is gonna be a weird experience, but I'm excited for the first shakedown in almost 5 years. What comes after? Well, we'll figure that out. The ultimate goal is still Pike's Peak, that hasn't changed. I don't have a ton of time to prepare though. The rest of the teams and builders have been testing for months now, while I have yet to even turn the engine over or to bolt on the starter. Nonetheless, this is my last opportunity to make it to the race to the clouds, and I plan to make it at any cost. No more procrastinating, no more giving up, no more excuses. Stick with me and my friends for this journey to see how it all pans out.
Ooh. Straight.
Yeah. I know. That's my excuse. Get it wrong.